Wind howls through the Loire Valley, rattling the leaded windows of Chateau de Montfaucon. A single candle gutters in the library. The Comte Etienne de Montfaucon sat rigid in his Louis XV armchair, a crystal snifter trembling in his manicured hand. Cognac spilled like liquid garnet across the Persian rug. His eyes, wide glassy, fixed upon the ormolu clock as it chimed the 3rd hour past midnight. "Mon Dieu!" he rasped, clutching his chest. Froth, pink and delicate, bloomed at the corner of his mouth. Chapter 1. The Telegram in the Rain. The rain came down in silver needles, each drop a tiny assassin against the fogged window of the wagon lits. Hercule Poirot sat alone in his first-class compartment, the green leather seat creaking softly beneath his compact frame. His patent leather shoes gleamed like obsidian. His grey spats were immaculate despite the mud of Calais docks. A single valise, monogrammed HP, rested on the rack above, secured with a silk cord. Outside, the Normandy countryside blurred into watercolour greys, hedgerows dissolving, church spires vanishing, the occasional cow staring with bovine indifference. The train's rhythm was a metronome, clack, 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 punctuated by the mournful wail of the whistle, as it plunged through tunnels of dripping beach. Poirot's gloved fingers unfolded the telegram with the precision of a surgeon. The paper was damp, the ink slightly smudged, yet the message remained implacable. Urgent! Comte Etienne de Montfaucon poisoned. Chateau de Montfaucon, Loire. Police baffled. Come at once. Inspecteur Jappe, Préfecture de Tours. He read it thrice, his moustaches, those magnificent symmetrical works of art, twitching with each pass. Poison. The word lingered like cigar smoke. Always the coward's weapon, yes, but also the most intimate. A kiss of death delivered in a glass, a pill, a perfumed handkerchief. Digitalis, he murmured to the empty compartment, recalling Yappe's earlier wire. From the foxglove, a heart medicine turned executioner, Tiens! The train lurched. A porter knocked, offering coffee. Poirot declined with a polite nod. He required clarity now, not caffeine. From his waistcoat pocket, he extracted a small morocco case, opened it, and selected a tiny comb. With ritualistic care, he groomed his moustaches, each stroke a meditation. The telegram had arrived at his London flat at dawn, delivered by a breathless boy who refused a tip. Poirot had been breakfasting on café au lait and a single croissant. Flaky, buttery, perfect. The interruption had been unwelcome, yet the little grey cells stirred. A chateau, a comte, a poisoning, and the Loire Valley in November, mist, frost, secrets fermenting like the wines in ancient cellars. He recalled the Montfaucon name from the society pages. Etienne, 52, widower, last of an ancient line. His wife, Clotilde, had died in a hunting accident 15 years prior. Or so the official story went. The chateau itself was a Gothic confection. Turrets, gargoyles, a moat now filled with reeds. It had belonged to the family since the Crusades, though the fortunes had dwindled. Vineyards sold, tapestries moth-eaten, the library's first edition sacrificed to Parisian auction houses. Poirot closed his eyes, visualizing the scene Jappe had sketched in frantic pencil. Intact, that was the crux. How does one poison a sealed bottle? Or was the seal a lie, reapplied with cunning? Poirot's lips curved. Already the little grey cells danced. The train slowed for Orléans. Through the window, he glimpsed the Loire herself, broad, pewter-coloured, sliding between willows like a conspirator. Somewhere beyond, the chateau waited. A memory surfaced, 1928, a similar case in Brussels. A banker, arsenic in his port, the bottle sealed, the cork pristine, the killer, the sommelier, who had injected the poison through the cork with a hypodermic, then resealed with a dab of wax warmed over a spirit lamp. Ingenious. But here, digitalis was a tincture, not a powder, a different method entirely. Poirot reopened the telegram, studying the handwriting. Jappe's script was hurried. The T in Montfaucon crossed with a slash like a duelling scar. The inspector was a man Poirot knew, competent, dogged, but lacking flair. He would trample clues like a bull in a herbaceous border. Hence the summons. The compartment door slid open. A woman entered, mid-30s, chic in a charcoal travelling suit, a fox fur stole despite the mild carriage heat. Her eyes were the colour of absinthe, and they fixed on Poirot with unsettling intensity. Monsieur Poirot. Her voice was low, lightly accented, Parisian, but with a trace of something else. Provence, perhaps. He inclined his head. À votre service, madame. She hesitated, then sat opposite, clutching a small crocodile handbag. I am Céleste Valois. The Comte was my brother-in-law. Ah, the plot thickened like crème anglaise. Madame Valois, sister to the late Comtesse Clotilde, a former demi-mondaine who had married into respectability, now proprietress of a failing couture house in the Rue de la Paix. The society columns whispered of debts, of a salon on the brink of closure. You travel to the chateau? Poirot asked. I was summoned, by telegram like you. She opened her bag, revealing a crumpled sheet identical to his own. Etienne was difficult, but murder. Her laugh was brittle. Who benefits? The estate is entailed. I get nothing. Poirot noted the tremor in her fingers, the way her eyes flicked to the corridor. Fear? Guilt? Or merely the chill of bereavement? Tell me of the household, he said gently. She leaned forward, scent of l'heure bleue wafting. Etienne lived like a medieval lord. The staff are fossils. Girard, the butler, has served 40 years. Then there is Dr. Lucien Favre, the physician, a handsome devil. But she shrugged. And Sabine, Etienne's niece, 22, wild, engaged to some penniless poet. Etienne threatened to cut her off. The train whistle screamed. They were approaching Tours. Madame Valois stood. We arrive soon. The car will meet us. She paused at the door. Find who did this, monsieur, for Clotilde's sake. She was gone, leaving only the faint perfume and a single fox fur hair on the seat, red as fresh blood. Poirot retrieved it with tweezers, sealing it in an envelope marked Exhibit A. One never knew. The car was a dilapidated Daimler, driven by a taciturn chauffeur in a cap pulled low. The drive wound through vineyards skeletal with autumn, past villages huddled beneath slate roofs. At last, the chateau loomed, a fairy-tale fortress gone slightly to seed. Ivy strangled the stone. One turret leaned drunkenly. The moat was a stagnant green ribbon, reflecting the bruised sky. Inspector Yapper waited beneath the portcullis, gaunt in a threadbare overcoat, his moustache drooping like a mourning banner. Enfin, Poirot, he exclaimed, pumping his hand. You look unchanged, still the dandy. And you, mon cher Jappe, still the bloodhound. Show me. They entered the great hall. Flagstones, armour, a chandelier furred with cobwebs. The air smelled of damp stone and beeswax. A maid, 19, freckled, eyes red, curtsied and fled. The library, Yappe said, leading the way. The room was a cavern of books. Leather spines cracked, gold lettering faded. A fire had burned low, ashes grey. The bergère stood centre stage, a dark stain on the cushion where the Comte had voided his bowels in death. The cognac snifter lay shattered, amber liquid dried to varnish. Poirot knelt, examining the rug. The spill pattern, radiating. He dropped the glass after the first sip. He moved to the desk. The bottle, Remy Martin, wax seal bearing the Montfaucon falcon, sat innocently beside a crystal decanter. Poirot lifted it, sniffed. Cognac, yes, but beneath, a faint bitterness. Almond? No, something herbal. Digitalis, Yappe confirmed. The local doctor, Favre, identified it. He was here within the hour. Convenient. Poirot's eyes narrowed. And the seal. Jappe produced a magnifying glass. Intact, but look. Under the lens, a hairline scratch marred the falcon's wing. Reapplied, Poirot murmured. With a hot knife, perhaps. The wax softened, moulded, cooled. Mais oui. He turned to the windows. Frost feathered the panes. Outside, a gravel path glistened. Footprints, size 10, hobnailed, led from the French doors to the rose garden, then vanished. Someone walked in frost, Poirot said, but not out. Curious. Jappe scratched his head. The gardener swears no one crossed the lawn after midnight. Poirot opened the doors. Cold air rushed in, carrying the scent of wet earth and decaying leaves. He stepped onto the terrace, Jappe trailing. The footprints were deep at the heel, shallow at the toe. Walking, backwards. Tiens, Poirot exclaimed. The killer entered, poisoned the glass, then retraced his steps in the same prints. Clever, but not clever enough. From the rose garden, a woman screamed. They ran. In the formal parterre, the maid from earlier knelt beside a topiary peacock, sobbing. At her feet, a silver tray, overturned. Shards of porcelain glittered like ice. And rising from the wreckage, a photograph, torn diagonally. Poirot lifted it with tweezers. The image showed the Comte, younger, embracing a woman in a garden. Her face was obliterated by the tear, but the dress, pale silk, embroidered with lilies, was unmistakable. Madame Valois, Jappe said. That's her wedding gown. Clotilde's, I mean. The maid hiccuped. I found it in the dustbin, sir, hidden under eggshells. I thought it might be important. Poirot's eyes gleamed. Important? Mademoiselle, you have the instincts of a detective. This photograph, it was meant to be destroyed, yet here it is. Why? He studied the tear. Clean, deliberate. The woman's face removed, but her hand remained, clutching the Comte's lapel, a ring visible. A ruby, heart-shaped. Jappe whistled. Sabine's ring. She wears it on a chain. Said it was her mother's. Poirot pocketed the photograph. Then we have our first lie. The ring is missing its stone, no? I observed it on Mademoiselle Sabine's finger in the train, dull, like a blood clot. Thunder growled. The sky split. Rain lashed the garden, turning gravel to rivers. Back in the hall, the suspects assembled like actors for a tableau. Madame Valois, veiled in black, diamonds flashing at her throat. Dr. Favre, medical bag clutched like a talisman, spectacles fogged. Sabine, cigarette holder poised, eyes defiant. Girard, the butler, ramrod straight, gloved hands clasped behind his back. Poirot surveyed them, his gaze lingering. Madame Valois' fan trembled. Dr. Favre's pupils were pinpricks. Sabine's ruby ring dull. Girard's gloves, ink stains at the fingertips. Mesdames, Messieurs, Poirot began, voice silky. A man is dead, poisoned, the bottle sealed, the footprints vanishing, and a photograph, torn, hidden, revealed. Someone here knows more than they say. Sabine laughed too brightly. Uncle was a tyrant. We all had reason. But poison? Beneath us. Dr. Favre adjusted his tie. I prescribed digitalis for his heart, a tincture. He took it nightly. Madame Valois dabbed her eyes. Etienne promised me the Paris apartment. Now, rien. Girard said nothing, but his jaw clenched. Poirot smiled. We shall see. Inspector Jappe will take statements. He tapped his temple. I shall listen to the little grey cells. As the household dispersed, a clock chimed. From the wainscoting, a secret panel clicked open with a soft snick. Inside, a child's christening gown, yellowed monogrammed, G.M. Girard paled. Chapter 2. The Suspects Assemble. The Chateau salon had once been the jewel of the Loire. Gilded cornices, frescoes of nymphs and satyrs faded to ghosts, a parquet floor polished by generations of aristocratic heels. Now it felt like a mausoleum. Dust motes drifted through shafts of pewter light. The air carried the must of old velvet and the sharper tang of fear. Hercule Poirot stood at the marble mantel, hands clasped behind his back, surveying the room with the calm of a general before battle. His green eyes, bright as peridots, missed nothing. The 4 suspects had been summoned by Inspector Yappe's barked orders, and they entered one by one, like pieces on a chessboard. First came Madame Céleste Valois. She swept in as though the room belonged to her, still black silk rustling, a veil of Belgian lace pinned to her chignon. Diamonds winked at her throat, too many for mourning, Poirot noted. Her face was a perfect oval, powdered to porcelain, but the eyes beneath the veil were red-rimmed. She carried a fan of ebony and ostrich feathers, snapping it open with a crack like a pistol shot. "Monsieur Poirot," she said, voice husky from Gauloises and grief, "I trust this will not take long. I have a train to Paris at dawn." Poirot inclined his head. "Madam, your patience will be rewarded. Please, the sofa." She sat, arranging her skirts like a queen. The fan trembled, only slightly. Next, Dr. Lucien Favre. He was 39, tall, with the lean build of a man who forgot meals. His hair was black, slicked back with brilliantine. His spectacles flashed as he blinked nervously. He clutched a brown leather medical bag as though it were a life raft. His coat, Harris tweed, expensive, was frayed at the cuffs. A faint scent of carbolic and lavender water clung to him. "Inspector Yappe says you are the famous Poirot," he began, voice clipped. "I treated the Comte for angina. Digitalis was prescribed. I keep meticulous records." Poirot's moustache twitched. "Meticulous, doctor? We shall see." Favre took the armchair opposite Madame Valois, placing the bag at his feet with exaggerated care. Then Mademoiselle Sabine de Montfaucon, 22, and every inch the flapper, bobbed hair the colour of ripe chestnuts, a dress of emerald crepe that ended scandalously at the knee. She smoked through a jade holder, exhaling towards the ceiling with theatrical boredom. A ruby ring hung on a chain at her throat. The stone was dull, cracked like a drop of congealed blood. "Uncle Etienne was a dinosaur," she announced, perching on the piano stool. "Threatened to cut me off if I married Raoul. Scandal, he called it. As if his own life was spotless." She flicked ash into a Sèvres vase. Poirot noted the tremor in her wrist. Last, Monsieur Girard, the butler. 60 years old, spine straight as a ramrod, tailcoat brushed to perfection. His face was a map of loyalty, deep lines from bowing, eyes pale blue and unreadable. He stood behind the others, hands gloved in white, cotton, though ink stains showed at the fingertips. 40 years I served the family, he said quietly. The Comte promised me a legacy. Now the lawyers say the will is complicated. Poirot smiled. Complicated, monsieur? Or perhaps convenient for someone? The long case clock in the corner struck 5. Dong, dong. Each chime seemed to tighten the room's invisible noose. Poirot stepped forward, shoes clicking on parquet. Mesdames, messieurs, we are here because a man is dead, poisoned. The cognac bottle sealed, yet the poison was inside. Someone in this room knows how. Someone did it. Madame Valois' fan snapped shut. Absurd. The estate is entailed to a distant cousin in Canada. I get nothing but debts. Dr. Favre leaned forward. Digitalis is not subtle. The Comte took it nightly, 10 drops in water. I measured it myself yesterday morning. Sabine laughed, a brittle sound, and left the bottle in the library? How trusting! Girard's voice was gravel. The library is locked at 11. Only the Comte had the key. Poirot raised a hand. Précisément. Yet the key was found inside the room, on the desk. The door unlocked when the maid discovered the body. Explain. Silence. Rain hammered the windows like impatient fists. Poirot began to pace, slow, deliberate. Let us reconstruct. The Comte dines alone. Filet de boeuf, pomme dauphine, a glass of 21 Margaux. At 10, he retires to the library with his cognac. The bottle is brought from the cellar by... Girard answered. Myself. Sealed. I broke the wax myself at table. Yet the seal on the bottle now is intact. Poirot stopped before the butler. You broke it. Then someone reapplied it. With what? A hot knife. A sealing iron from the kitchen. Girard's gloved hands clenched. I served the cognac in a fresh glass. The Comte dismissed me at 10:17. Poirot turned to Favre. You, doctor, you visited at 11:47 p.m., Favre said promptly. The Comte rang for his tonic. I administered 10 drops, left the bottle on the sideboard. Sabine stubbed out her cigarette. I was in my room, reading Vogue. Asked the maid. She brought me cocoa at midnight. Madame Valois opened her fan again. I retired at 9, took a sleeping draught. The housekeeper can confirm. Poirot's eyes gleamed. Alibis, how convenient. Yet alibis are like pie crusts, made to be broken. From his pocket, Poirot produced the torn photograph, the one the maid had found. He held it aloft. This was hidden in the kitchen bin. The Comte embracing a woman in a lily-embroidered gown. Madame Valois, your sister Clotilde's wedding dress, no? Madame Valois gasped, hand to throat. Where did you... That was private. Sabine leaned forward. Uncle kept it in his desk. I saw it once. He was sentimental. Poirot's voice was silk over steel. Sentimental or blackmail? The woman's face is torn away, deliberately, yet her hand remains. See the ring? He passed it to Jappe, who held it to the light. A ruby, heart-shaped. Mademoiselle Sabine, your ring? Sabine touched the chain at her neck. It was mother's. The stone cracked last week. I meant to have it reset. Last week, Poirot repeated. Yet the photograph is old. The dress is from 1910. The ring in the picture is perfect. Someone substituted the stones. Why? Dr. Favre shifted. Coincidence. Ruby's chip. Poirot whirled. Coincidence? Doctor, you disappoint me. Rubies do not chip like glass. They cleave. This stone was prized out. He moved to the windows, drawing back heavy brocade curtains. Outside, the rose garden glimmered under rain. The footprints in the frost, size 10 hobnailed. Doctor, your galoshes are in the hall. Size 10, hobnailed. Favre paled. I walked the terrace at 11:30. The Comte complained of dizziness. I checked his pulse. Yet the footprints vanish at the gravel. You walked backwards in your own prints, a trick to confuse, but the frost was thin. Your second passage deepened the heel marks. Elementary. Madame Valois stood. This is monstrous. Lucien is a respected physician. Poirot's smile was wintry. Respected men kill, madame, for love, for money, for silence. The clock chimed the quarter. Poirot produced a second item, a train ticket stub, 3rd class Paris to Tours, dated the previous day. Mademoiselle Sabine, your alibi is Paris, yet this was in your waste paper basket. Sabine's cigarette holder clattered to the floor. I bought it for Raoul. He was coming to meet me." "Raoul the poet?" Poirot asked. "Arrested this morning in Orléans for forging checks. He says you gave him the ticket to establish your absence." Sabine's eyes flashed. "Lies! He's covering his own theft, the ruby from my ring." Girard spoke for the first time unprompted. "Mademoiselle's ring was seen in the Comte's desk 2 nights ago. I dusted the library. It lay beside the photograph." Sabine whirled. "You spied!" "I served," Girard corrected. "The Comte showed me the ring. Said it proved something. He was agitated." Poirot's mind raced. The ring, the photograph, the poison, all connected by inheritance. He addressed Madame Valois. "You say the estate is entailed, yet the Comte rewrote his will last month. Girard, show them." The butler produced a ledger from his tailcoat. "The Comte's instructions, to be opened on his death. The Canadian cousin is disinherited. The bulk goes to—" He stopped. "To whom?" Poirot pressed. Girard's voice was a whisper. "To his natural child, if proven." The room froze. Madame Valois laughed, too loudly. "Etienne had no bastards." But Girard's gloved hands trembled. The ink stains, suddenly significant. Poirot stepped closer. "Monsieur Girard, the christening gown in the secret panel. Monogrammed GM, your initials, the Chie Comte's father. Did he have a mistress in the village? A laundry maid, perhaps?" Girard's face crumpled. I found papers. In the attic. A letter from my mother. The Comte promised to acknowledge me. Then he changed his mind." Chapter 3. The Library of Secrets. Hercule Poirot stood alone in the centre of the room, coat buttoned to the throat, Homburg hat placed precisely on the blotter. Dawn had not yet conquered the night. The only light came from a green banker's lamp, and the occasional flicker of lightning through the mullioned windows. The Comte's body had been removed hours ago, but the outline remained. Chalk on Persian silk, a macabre silhouette. Poirot knelt beside the hearth, gloved fingers sifting ashes with the delicacy of an archaeologist. The fire had been banked at midnight. Girard had sworn to it. Yet these ashes were fine, powdery, burned at high heat long after the logs collapsed. Someone had fed the flames. He extracted a fragment no larger than a confetti. Vellum, watermarked, the ink bled but legible. The child was never yours. The rest curled into black lace. Poirot sealed it in a glassine envelope marked Exhibit B. "Tiens," he murmured, "a letter destroyed, but not completely. The little grey cells, they are grateful." Poirot rose, joints protesting the cold, and approached the desk. The Remy Martin bottle stood sentinel, wax seal gleaming like fresh blood under the lamp. He lifted it, tilting to the light. The liquid inside sloshed thick and dark. He produced a pocket lens, breath fogging the glass. The seal, Montfaucon falcon, wings spread, beak open in a silent scream. But there, on the dexter wing, a hairline scratch, no thicker than a cat's whisker. "Reapplied," he said aloud. The wax softened over a spirit lamp, moulded with a hot knife, cooled in the frost. "Mais oui." He sniffed the neck. "Cognac, yes. Vanilla, oak, a whisper of apricot." Beneath it, the faint bitterness of foxglove. Digitalis did not belong in 1892 vintages. Poirot uncorked the bottle, pop, and poured a thimbleful into a crystal glass. He did not drink. Instead, he dipped a strip of litmus. Blue to red alkaloid. Enough to fell an ox, he noted, yet the Comte was frail. 1 sip would suffice. He stoppered the bottle, wrapped it in silk, and placed it in his valise. Evidence must be preserved. The French doors creaked as Poirot opened them. Cold air rushed in, carrying the scent of wet boxwood and turned earth. The terrace flagstones were slick with melt. The frost had surrendered to drizzle. Yesterday's footprints were ghosts now, shallow depressions filled with water. But Poirot had photographed them at first light, using Yappe's bulky Kodak. He knelt again, comparing the negative to the ground. Size 10, hobnailed, deep at the heel, shallow at the toe. The stride, 31 inches. A tall man walking backwards. He followed the trail to the rose garden. The gravel path began, here swallowing prints. But wait, beneath the yew hedge, a single galoche mark, fresh. Someone had returned in the night. Poirot scraped mud into a tin. Later, the laboratory in Tours would match it to Dr. Favre's boots. For now, intuition sufficed. Back inside, Poirot locked the doors and turned to the wastepaper basket. Wicker, lined with yesterday's Figaro. He upended it. Amongst crumpled invitations and a broken fountain pen, nib lay the train ticket stub. Paris Tours, 3rd class, 16th November. He held it to the lamp. The perforation was torn cleanly, used, yet Sabine claimed to be in Paris. Poirot slipped the stub into another envelope. Then, beneath the basket liner, something glinted. A ruby chip, no larger than a pomegranate seed. He lifted it with tweezers. The facets were precise, the colour blood dark. From Sabine's ring, or the one in the photograph. A soft knock. The door opened to reveal Sabine herself, wrapped in a man's dressing gown, silk, monogrammed EM, hair tousled, eyes puffy. "Monsieur Poirot," she said, voice husky, "I couldn't sleep, may I?" He gestured to the bergère, the death chair. She hesitated, then sat on the edge, knees together. "You found my ticket," she said flatly. "Raoul was supposed to use it. He never came." Poirot held up the ruby chip. "And this?" She touched her necklace. The ring was gone. "It fell out yesterday, in the garden. I searched, yet here it is, in the library basket." Poirot's tone was gentle, deadly. "You were here last night, mademoiselle, after midnight." Sabine's breath hitched. "I came for Uncle's will. He kept it in the safe behind the Rembrandt. I thought, if I could destroy the codicil, the one disinheriting you." She nodded. "He found out about Raoul. Said I'd brought shame on the name. I heard him arguing with someone through the door, a man's voice, not Girard's." Poirot leaned forward. "Describe." "Low, cultured, angry, something about prescriptions. Then a crash. The glass, I think. I fled." "Dr. Favre." The timeline tightened. Poirot moved to the bookshelves, mahogany, carved with gargoyles. He pressed the third shelf from the bottom, counting under his breath. Click. A section swung inward, revealing a narrow passage. Dust motes danced in the lamplight. The passage smelled of mildew and candle smoke. Footprints here, too, smaller, stockinged. Sabine's. He followed it 10 paces to a spiral stair descending to the wine cellar. But first, a niche in the wall. Inside, a leather-bound journal, pages warped with damp. Poirot opened it. The Comte's handwriting, spidery, furious. 15th October. Favre increases dosage again, claims my heart weakens. I suspect morphine for his own use. Found empty vials in his bag. Confronted him. He wept. Pathetic, 1st November. Letter from Girard. The boy claims to be my brother. DNA nonsense, but the birthmark matches father's. Must rewrite will. Valois will fight. 10th November. Sabine's poet, Raoul Dupont, arrested for forgery. She begs leniency. I refuse. The line ends with me. The final entry, dated yesterday, Favre, here at 11. Must tell him, enough. The child was never his. Poirot's pulse quickened. The child. The letter in the ashes. He pocketed the journal. The spiral stair ended in the wine cellar, racks of dusty bottles, cobwebs like lace. A single bulb swung from a cord, casting shadows that writhed. Poirot's lantern picked out a crate in the corner, digitalis, property of Dr. Elfavre. The lid was pried open. Inside, straw, broken glass, one intact vial, empty. He lifted it. The label was handwritten, the ink fresh. Someone had replaced the Comte's tonic with concentrated poison. Footsteps overhead. Poirot extinguished the lantern. Dr. Favre descended, coat unbuttoned, face slick with sweat despite the cold. He carried a candle, its flame trembling. Looking for this? Poirot stepped from the shadows, holding the vial. Favre dropped the candle. Wax splattered. I disposed of the excess. Standard procedure. At 3 a.m., Poirot's voice was soft, after resealing the cognac with a kitchen knife. Favre's eyes darted. You cannot prove. I do not need to. The mud on your boots matches the terrace. The wax under your nails is Montfaucon red. And this? Poirot produced the love letter from Chapter 2, now smudged with cellar grime. Written to Madame Valois. Forgive me, Celeste. He knows about us, about the child. Favre lunged. Poirot sidestepped. The doctor crashed into the crate, vials shattering. Assez! Poirot pinned him with the cane. The child doctor, Sabine's, Favre sagged. Yes. Etienne found the birth papers, threatened to expose me, ruin my practice. I swapped the tonic. He drank at midnight. I thought heart failure would mask it. But the aconite? Poirot asked. Favre blinked. Aconite? Poirot's eyes narrowed. 2 poisons. Poirot raced up the passage, Favre stumbling behind. In the library, Valois stood over the desk, face ashen. The safe hung open. Inside, the will, and a second photograph, this one intact. The Comte, younger, holding a baby. On the back, in faded ink, Lucien 6 months. Do not tell Celeste. Chapter 4. The Ghost in the Mirror. The corridor stretched 50 paces, oak-panelled, lit only by a single candelabrum Poirot had carried from the library. Each flame trembled in the draught, throwing gargoyles into grotesque life. Portraits of Montfaucon ancestors. Armoured knights, powdered marquises, one severe bishop, watched with painted eyes. Their gilt frames were furred with centuries of dust. The air tasted of Tallojar and old blood. Hercule Poirot walked the centre line, cane tapping, a measured tap-tap-tap. Behind him, the household trailed like reluctant pilgrims. Madame Valois, veiled and shaking. Dr. Favre handcuffed to Inspector Jappet. Sabine defiant in a guest man's smoking jacket. Girard carrying a storm lantern that swung wild shadows. We reconstruct, Poirot announced, voice ringing off stone. The Comte's final hour, précisément. At the gallery's heart stood the mirror. Venetian, 6 feet tall, frame carved with mermaids and serpents. Its glass was antique, wavy, silver backing mottled like a leopard's pelt. Legend claimed it had come from Versailles, a gift from Louis XV to a Montfaucon mistress. Poirot positioned the Comte's empty bergère before it, dragged from the library. He poured cognac from a fresh bottle, not the poisoned one, into a duplicate snifter. Messieurs, dames, he said, observe. He sat, mimicking the Comte's posture, spine rigid, glass raised. In the mirror, his reflection stared back, moustaches perfect, eyes bright. 11:47 p.m., Poirot intoned. Dr. Favre enters via the terrace, administers tonic, leaves. The Comte is alone. He sips. He raised the glass, pretending to drink. Madame Valois whispered, I saw him arguing with his reflection. It moved without him. Sabine snorted. Laudanum dreams, aunt. Poirot stood smoothly. Mirrors lie only when men make them. He pressed the frame's left mermaid. Click. The mirror swung inward on silent hinges, revealing a narrow passage papered in faded crimson. Mon Dieu, Jappa breathed. A priest's hole. Or a lover's, Poirot corrected. Built for intrigue. The passage was coffin-narrow, air thick with mouse droppings and violet scent. Poirot's candle picked out details. A child's handprint in dust, a scrap of lace snagged on a nail, a single red thread clinging to the wainscot. He knelt. The thread was silk, hand-woven, matched the torn hem of Dr. Favre's coat, now in evidence. Favre protested. I never... Jappa yanked the cuffs. Silence. 20 paces in, the passage forked. Left to the wine cellar, already explored. Right to a spiral stair ascending to... Poirot climbed. The others followed, footsteps muffled on worn stone. At the top, a peephole into the Comte's bedroom. Through it the four-poster loomed, canopy sagging. The bed was unmade, sheets twisted as if in agony. From here, Poirot said, one could watch the Comte sleep or wake or die. Sabine shivered. Uncle knew he bolted his door every night. Yet the bolt was drawn this morning, Girard said quietly, from the inside. Poirot's eyes gleamed. Précisément, drawn by the killer, after death. Back in the gallery, Poirot staged the scene. He had Girard play the Comte, rigid in the chair. Dr. Favre, cuffs removed for drama, stood at the terrace doors. Sabine at the mirror's hidden side. Madame Valois by the candelabrum. 11:30, Poirot narrated. The house sleeps. The killer enters via the passage. Sabine stepped through the mirror, silent as smoke. Adds digitalis to the glass, not the bottle. The seal is a... Blind, she mimed, pouring from a vial. 11:47, Dr. Favre arrives openly, gives tonic, innocent dosage. Leaves via terrace, walking backwards in frost to confuse. Favre shuffled out, Jappa shadowing. 11:50, the Comte sips, convulses, dies at 11:52. The killer returns, Sabine re-entered, drawing an imaginary bolt. Locks the library, exits via passage, but Poirot stopped. Madame Valois claims she saw the reflection move alone. Explain. Valois stepped forward, voice trembling. I passed the gallery at 11:55. The mirror showed Etienne standing, but the chair was empty. His image raised the glass, drank, then vanished. Sabine rolled her eyes. Hysteria! Poirot examined the mirror's back. A thin wire ran from the frame to a pulley in the ceiling. He tugged. The reflection tilted, a second glass panel painted, sliding across. A trick mirror, he revealed, used in music halls. The killer operated it from the passage, creating the ghost. Madame saw the painted Comte drink, not the real one, already dead. Valois fainted, caught by Girard. Poirot led them down the right fork to the wine cellar. The crate, digitalis, property of Dr. Elfavre, lay splintered. But now something new. Beneath the straw, a monk's hood root, dried purple flowers intact. Aconite. Jappa whistled. Wolfsbane grows in the conservatory. Poirot lifted it with tweezers. Instant paralysis, one touch to the lip. Favre shook his head violently. Not mine! Poirot's gaze swept the racks. A bottle was missing, dust outline of a 1900 Sauterne. In its place, a smear of fresh wax, Montfaucon red. He scraped it. The sealing iron, hidden here after use. Girard spoke. The conservatory monk's hood is my responsibility, for rats. Sabine laughed bitterly. Rat poison for uncles? Chapter 5. The Illegitimate Heir. The nursery lay at the chateau's easternmost turret, a forgotten kingdom of faded chintz and moth-eaten teddies. Sunlight, thin winter pale, filtered through grimy panes, striping the floorboards in bars of gold and shadow. A porcelain doll sat in a wicker pram, its smile cracked like old ice. Hercule Poirot entered first, cane silenced by a threadbare Aubusson rug. Behind him came the others. Inspector Jappa with notebook poised, Dr. Favre pale and unshaven, Sabine chain-smoking, Madame Valois supported by Girard, whose butler's mask had slipped to reveal raw anguish. Poirot stopped before a walnut cradle, its canopy yellowed lace. Inside lay the christening gown from the secret panel, baptismal silk, once white, now the colour of weak tea. The monogram GM was embroidered in faded crimson. "Regardez," Poirot said softly, "a child slept here in 1885. He lifted it with reverence. The fabric whispered, releasing a ghost of lavender and talc. Beneath the hem, a rust-brown stain, irregular, the size of a franc. "Blood?" Japet asked. Poirot sniffed. "Iron. Yes, but old. 40 years at least." Girard's gloved hands clenched. "My mother was a laundry maid. She died in childbirth. The Comte's father paid for the funeral. I was raised in the village." Madame Valois sank into a nursing chair. Veil pushed back, face ravaged. Etienne's father was a monster. Mistresses in every barn. Sabine flicked ash onto a teddy bear. "Spare us the family tree. Girard wants the estate. He kills for it. Fin." Poirot's eyes narrowed. "No, mademoiselle. The gown proves nothing, yet everything." He turned it inside out. Hidden in the lining, a pocket. Inside, a silver baptismal medal. Gaspard Montfaucon, 12 May 1885. Girard gasped. "That was my name, before they changed it to Girard." Poirot produced the Comte's journal from chapter 3. He opened to a dog-eared page. 20th October. Girard brings papers. Birthmark on left shoulder. Matches father's. DNA not needed. He is blood. Must acknowledge in will. Valois will contest. Poirot closed it. "The Comte planned to recognize you, monsieur. Half the estate. Yours by right." Girard's voice cracked. "He promised. Then last week, I cannot shame the name." He tore the codicil. Japet scribbled. "Motive." Poirot shook his head. "Motive, yes, but opportunity." He moved to a toy chest. Cedar, carved with knights. Inside, wooden soldiers, a spinning top, and a modern ledger. Black leather, 1935. Poirot flipped it. Columns of figures, vineyard yields, auction sales, debts. The final entry yesterday, digitalis, 12 vials, pour 50 francs, Thiergard 600 francs. Paid to El Favre. Favre lunged. "That's my invoice. Stolen." Poirot held up a ruby, whole, tied with black ribbon. "Found in Girard's quarters. Planted." Girard paled. "I swear." Japet ordered Girard's rooms searched. The household trooped to the servants' wing. Narrow corridors, peeling wallpaper, the smell of boiled cabbage. Girard's chamber was monastic. Iron bed, crucifix, one photograph, his mother young, holding a baby. Under the mattress, the ruby. In the boot, a train ticket, Paris tour, yesterday. Sabine crowed. "The butler did it!" But Poirot knelt, examining the ticket. "Third class. Girard travels first class when on estate business. This is Sabine's ticket, planted with the ruby." He produced the stub from chapter 3. Identical perforation. Sabine's cigarette trembled. "Raoul, confessed," Poirot finished, "in Orléans. Paid 200 francs to plant evidence. By you." A maid burst in, breathless. "Telegram for mademoiselle." Sabine tore it open, her face strained. "Raoul arrested. Confessed stealing ring. Says you paid him to frame Girard. Préfecture Orléans." She laughed, manic, too loud. "He's lying to save himself." Poirot's voice was gentle. "The ruby in Girard's boot. Your fingerprints, mademoiselle, from the chain you wear." He produced a powder-dusted glass. Sabine's prints, clear. Madame Valois stood. "You little vipère. Etienne warned me. Warned you." Poirot pounced. "About what?" Valois hesitated. "The child, my son. Etienne said he died at birth. But the locket—" She clutched the silver locket from chapter 4. Poirot opened it. The curl of hair, black, Favre's colouring. "Sabine is your daughter," he said to Valois. "By the Comte, hidden to avoid scandal, raised as niece." Sabine screamed, "Lies!" but her eyes, green like Poirot's own in the mirror, betrayed her. Poirot led them to the glass house, ferns drooping, orchids skeletal. Monk's hood grew in a corner, purple blooms sinister. He lifted a pot. Beneath, a syringe, digitalis residue. "Used to inject the cognac glass," he said. "Not the bottle. The seal. Irrelevant." Favre whispered, "I supplied the drug, but the aconite—" Poirot produced a second syringe. Aconite crystals. "From here. Planted in your bag, doctor." He turned to Girard. "You grew the monk's hood, but who harvested it?" Girard pointed to a ledger on the potting bench. "Sabine, she asked for rat poison last month." Sabine bolted. Japet caught her wrist. The nursery clock struck 8. Poirot gathered them before the cradle. Truth, he lifted the gown. Beneath the stain, a hidden pocket. Inside, a note, Sabine's handwriting. "If he disinherits me, I'll take everything. The monk's hood is ready." Poirot's voice was steel. "You poisoned the glass with aconite. Digitalis was the distraction, but a crash." The nursery door burst open. A village boy, mud-splattered. "Monsieur Poirot, the Comte's lawyer, from Paris. He's dead, poisoned on the train." In the boy's hand, a telegram, blood-stained. Chapter 6. The Doctor's Confession. Palms clawed at the iron ribs overhead. Vines strangled statues of forgotten gods. Rain hammered the panes like machine-gun fire, turning the world beyond into a grey blur. Water streamed down the glass in silver rivers, pooling on the terracotta floor where orchids, once prized, now dying, lay bruised and bleeding violet. Hercule Poirot stood beneath a shattered skylight, coat collar turned up, hat dripping. Lightning forked, illuminating the tableau. Dr. Lucien Favre on his knees among the monk's hood, wrists cuffed, spectacles cracked, Inspector Japet looming with revolver drawn. Madame Valois collapsed on a rattan chaise, veil sodden with tears. Sabine chained to a marble urn, cigarette long extinguished, Girard rigid as a sentinel, lantern guttering in the gale. Poirot's voice cut through the storm. "Assez! The game ends here, docteur." Favre's medical bag lay open, contents scattered like entrails. Stethoscope coiled like a serpent, morphine ampules glittering, the empty digitalis vial from the cellar. Poirot nudged it with his cane. "You supplied the poison. You visited at 11:47 exactement. Your galoshes matched the terrace prints. You resealed the cognac with a scalpel from this bag." Favre's laugh was hollow. "Circumstantial. I treated his heart. Non." Poirot produced the Comte's journal. Entry, 10th of November. Favre increases dosage. Found empty vials. Confronted. He wept. You forged prescriptions. Sold morphine on the black market. The Comte discovered. Thunder crashed. A pane exploded inward. Rain lashed their faces. Favre shielded his eyes. "He was blackmailing me. Threatened to ruin my practice." Poirot circled. Predator slow. "So you acted. 11:30. You entered via the mirror passage." He gestured to the conservatory door, now splintered. The passage opened here, hidden behind a trellis of night-blooming jasmine. Swapped his tonic with concentrated digitalis. You knew he'd drink at midnight. You resealed the bottle to mislead. Clever. But the timing, Favre's voice cracked. "He rang early. 11:47. I gave the real tonic, 10 drops. He was alive when I left." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "Précisément. The autopsy, heart failure, at 11:52, before the digitalis could act. Someone else hastened death." Sabine spat. "Aconite! From your monk's hood, Girard." Girard shook his head. "I logged every route. One missing, yesterday, taken by you!" Valois screamed at Sabine. "You asked for rat poison." Sabine's chains rattled. "I framed Girard. The ruby, the ticket, yes, but I never touched the glass." Poirot knelt among the monk's hood. The plants were lethal, purple helmets, roots oozing white sap. He lifted a broken stem, harvested with garden shears, the cut, jagged, done in haste. He produced the syringe from Chapter 5. Aconite crystals dissolved, injected into the glass rim. One sip, paralysis in seconds. Favre whispered, "Not me, I swear." Poirot turned. Then who? The digitalis was slow. The killer needed instant. Lightning illuminated a shadow on the glass, handprint small, delicate. "Sabine's," Japet said, "from the urn chain." Sabine laughed wildly. "I was in my room, cocoa at midnight." Poirot produced a cocoa cup, chipped from the kitchen. Analysed. Laudanum. You drugged the maid, took her keys, entered the library at 11:50. He mimed, inject, sip, collapse. But the Comte was already dead, Favre insisted. Heart failure. Poirot's voice was ice. No, the aconite caused the failure. Digitalis was the distraction. Poirot held up the forged letter, S de Favre. Raoul wrote this, but the real letter, he produced a second sheet, found in Sabine's boudoir, hidden in a compact. Lucien, meet me in the conservatory, 11:30. Bring the digitalis. I'll handle the rest. See. Madame Valois gasped. Celeste, my handwriting, but I never... Poirot's eyes locked on her. You knew about the child, your grandson. The Comte planned to expose Favre's affair with Sabine, ruin you both. Valois stood, trembling. Etienne was cruel. He said, "Ye definite boy, my Lucien was his, raised as nephew to control the inheritance," Sabine screamed. "You knew I was your daughter." Valois wept. "He forced me to give you up, said it was for the family." Chapter 7. The Niece's Gambit. Walls lacquered midnight blue, ceiling silver-leafed, a chandelier of Lalique glass dripping like frozen tears. The bed, circular, black satin, dominated, its headboard a sunburst of mirrors reflecting infinity. A gramophone hissed, La Vie en Rose, at half speed. Piaf's voice warped to a dirge. Sabine sat at her vanity, cigarette trembling between crimson lips, emerald dress torn at the hem. The ruby ring, whole again, hung from a chain, catching lightning in blood-red flashes. Hercule Poirot entered without knocking, cane silent on the thick carpet. Inspector Japet followed, revolver holstered but hand hovering. Madame Valois hovered in the doorway, veil discarded, face stripped of powder and pretense. Dr. Favre and Girard waited in the corridor, shadows against the storm. Poirot closed the door with a soft click. "Mademoiselle," he began, voice velvet over steel, "your gambit, it ends tonight." Sabine stubbed the cigarette in a crystal ashtray shaped like a skull. "Gambit? I'm the victim here. Uncle disinherited me for loving a poet." Poirot opened the compact from Chapter 6, gold, monogrammed SM. Inside, face powder, a mirror, and a hidden compartment. He pressed. It sprang open. Aconite crystals glittered like frost. "Your fingerprints," he said, "on the syringe, on the glass rim, on the monkshood stem." Sabine's laugh was brittle, planted, like the ruby in Girard's boot. Poirot produced the ruby, 2 now. One cracked, one perfect. You stole the stone to frame Girard. Raoul reset it for 500 francs. He laid Raoul's confession on the vanity, paid by S to forge letter, plant ruby, steel ring. Sabine's eyes flicked to the mirrors. In them, she was everywhere, fractured, infinite. Poirot held up the third-class stub. "You used it. Returned yesterday. The maid's cocoa, laced with laudanum from Favre's bag. You took her keys." He produced the cocoa cup, dregs analysed. "Chloral hydrate, enough to fell a horse." Sabine stood, pacing. "I went to the library, yes, to burn the codicil. I heard Uncle arguing with Favre about the child, my child. She whirled on Valois. You knew. He was mine and Lucien's. Valois wept. Etienne forced me to give you up, said it was for the estate. Poirot's voice was soft. The child in the locket, Lucien Jr., hidden in the village, the Comte planned to name him heir. Poirot opened Sabine's wardrobe. Dresses shimmered. Chéra, Lanvin. Behind them, a hatbox. Inside, a second digitalis vial, full. You poisoned the glass, he said, not the bottle. The seal was irrelevant. Aconite on the rim, paralysis. Digitalis in the cognac, distraction. Sabine's chain snapped. The ruby fell, rolling across the floor. I wanted him dead, she hissed, for disinheriting me, for hiding my son, but I never— Poirot knelt, lifting the ruby. Beneath it, a train ticket, Paris to Lyon, tonight, one way. You planned to flee, with the child. Sabine lunged for the window. Japet blocked her. Poirot turned to the sunburst headboard. Mirrors lie, mademoiselle, but they also tell. He pressed a panel. A mirror swung aside. Another passage. This one led to the nursery. From here, you watched the Comte, heard his plans, harvested monkshood at 3 p.m., signed Girard's ledger, injected the glass at 11:50. Sabine's reflection fractured as lightning struck. Prove it. Poirot produced a silk scarf, hers, monogrammed, found in the passage traces of aconite. And this, a child's drawing, crayon on vellum. A stick figure labelled Maman, holding a baby, found in the cradle. Sabine crumpled. He was going to take my son, send him to Canada, with the cousin. Poirot unfolded the coroner's report. 2 toxins, digitalis, slow, from the tonic swap, aconite, instant from the rim. The heart stopped at 11:52, before digitalis peaked. He turned to Favre. You supplied the distraction. Sabine, the killing blow. Favre shook his head. I thought he died of the digitalis. No, you left at 11:47. Sabine entered at 11:50. The maid, drugged, saw nothing. Valois whispered, She's my daughter. I should have, Sabine spat. You abandoned me, for diamonds and a salon. Poirot produced the torn will from the chapel. The Comte rewrote it yesterday. Heir, Lucien Jr. Guardian, Girard. The butler, his half-brother. Girard entered, eyes wet. He told me at dusk, said, blood forgives. Then he locked himself in the library. Sabine screamed. He gave everything to a bastard and a servant. Poirot's voice was calm. You killed for a fortune already lost. Lightning illuminated the gramophone. The record skipped. La Vie en Rose warped to a child's lullaby. The door burst open. A village priest soaked, clutching a boy, 5 years old, black hair, green eyes. Monsieur Poirot, the child, Lucien Jr., was hidden in the crypt, the Comte's last note. If I die, protect him. The boy held a silver rattle. GM engraved. Sabine reached for him. Mon bébé! The boy shrank behind the priest. Maman, hurt papa! In his tiny hand, a monkshood flower, purple and deadly. Poirot's whisper, The heir lives but the killer, she breathes. Chapter 8. The butler's silence. The pantry was the chateau's beating heart, hidden behind the kitchen swing door. Shelves marched in perfect rows, jars of quince jelly glowing like rubies. Tins labelled in Girard's copperplate, Tim, Romarin, sel de mer. A small table held an inkwell, a blotter, and a ledger open to yesterday's date. Monsieur Girard stood at the sink, sleeves rolled, scrubbing a silver teapot with monastic precision. His tailcoat hung on a hook. The white gloves, always white, were folded beside a bowl of lemons. Hercule Poirot entered alone, closing the door with a soft snick. The storm's roar muted to a dull thrum. Monsieur Girard, Poirot said, voice low. 40 years you served. Now the Comte is dead, and you are silent. Girard dried his hands on a linen cloth. Movements deliberate. Silence is a butler's virtue, monsieur. Poirot opened the ledger. Columns of ink. Vin Rouge, 12 Bouteilles, 1921 Margot. Digitalis, 3 vials, Dr. Favre. He turned to a fresh page, dated yesterday. Poirot tapped it. You gave her the poison. Girard's jaw tightened. Monkshood is my domain. I log every leaf. She took one root. I thought nothing, until the Comte died of aconite. Poirot produced the broken stem from the conservatory. Cut with your shears. The blade, nicked on the left, matches the scar on the root. Girard's eyes flicked to a drawer. Inside, the shears, one blade chipped. Poirot lifted a small terracotta pot from the shelf. Monk's hood, Aconitum napellus, grew inside, purple blooms sinister under the lamp. You cultivated this for rat poison, yet the chateau has no rats. Girard's voice was gravel. The Comte insisted, said the conservatory was overrun. I obeyed. Poirot crushed a petal. White sap oozed. One drop on the lip. Death in minutes, you knew. He opened another drawer. Inside, a glass vial, corked, labelled aconite extract. G.M. Girard paled. I distilled it for emergencies, never used. Poirot uncorked it. The scent, bitter almonds. Half empty, used last night. Poirot produced a maid's statement, signed by 3 housemaids. Girard retired to servants' wing at 11:15. Heard snoring until 6 a.m. 3 witnesses, Poirot said. Yet you were in the library at 11:50. Girard shook his head. Impossible. I bolt the wing door at 11. Poirot opened the pantry's back door, unbolted. Beyond, a narrow stair to the wine cellar. From here, you reached the mirror passage in 90 seconds, injected the glass, returned before the maids noticed. Girard's hands trembled. I served him 40 years. Poirot's voice softened. And he promised you a legacy, then rewrote the will to the child. Poirot pulled a false panel in the shelf. Behind, a second ledger, older, leather cracked. Pages yellowed, ink faded. Girard's eyes filled. He showed me the new will, said, blood is not enough, then locked himself in the library. Poirot turned the page, a pressed monkshood flower. You planned to poison him slowly, digitalis in his tea, but Sabine acted first. Girard whispered, I found the glass, rim wet. I wiped it, to protect her. The door opened. Madame Valois entered, teacup rattling on saucer. Girard, you. She set the cup down. Steam, curled aconite scent. Poirot snatched it. Mon Dieu, you poisoned her tea. Valois swayed. I felt faint. He brought me. Girard lunged for the cup. Poirot blocked. Assez. Poirot smelled the tea. Aconite. Enough to kill in an hour. Valois collapsed. Jappe burst in, summoned by the commotion. Girard's voice broke. She knew about the child, my nephew. She wanted him dead, all of us dead, to save her salon. Poirot found it under the teapot. Vellum, Valois' handwriting. I cannot bear the shame. The child was never mine. Forgive me. C.V. Poirot's eyes narrowed. Written after she drank, ink still wet. He produced Valois' fountain pen, empty. You forced her to write it, then poisoned the tea to silence her. Girard sagged. She came here at 9. Said she'd tell the police everything about the child, the will, Sabine's plan. I panicked. Thunder shook the pantry. The gas lamp flickered. Poirot opened the final drawer. Inside, the real will, intact. Heir, Lucien Jr. Guardian Girard. But on the back, in the Comte's spidery hand, if I die by poison, trust no one. The monk's hood is Girard's. The child is safe, in the crypt. Girard whispered, he knew, all along. The door burst open. Sabine, wild-eyed, holding the child, Lucien Jr. "He's mine!" she screamed. "You'll never take him!" In her hand, the missing sealing iron red hot. Lightning flashed. The pantry plunged into darkness. Chapter 9. The final assembly books loomed like silent witnesses. The Persian rug bore its chalk ghost. The cognac bottle, evidence, stood on the desk beside the shattered snifter, both sealed in glass jars. 12 candles burned, their flames trembling as if in fear. Hercule Poirot stood before the hearth, back to the dying fire, hands clasped behind him. The household formed a ragged semicircle. Madame Valois, bandaged pale, on a chaise, aconite purged but spirit broken. Dr. Favre, cuffed to a chair, spectacles mended with tape, eyes hollow. Sabine, wrists bound with silk cord, ruby ring confiscated, hair wild, tailcoat discarded, shirt blooded from the sealing iron burn, face a mask of ruin. Inspector Chappé, revolver drawn, notebook soaked but open. Lucien Jr., the child heir, clutched by the village priest, thumb in mouth, eyes wide. The ormolu clock struck midnight. Dong, Poirot's voice rang out. "Mesdames, Monsieur, the little grey cells have spoken. The Comte was dying, yes, but murdered. Tonight, we unmask the killer." Poirot paced, cane tapping. "Let us walk the path of death, précisément." He stopped at the desk. The bottle, sealed, a lie. Wax reapplied with the kitchen iron. He lifted the iron, cooled falcon crest scarred. Found in Sabine's hand, but used by another. He turned to Favre. 11:30. You entered via the mirror passage, swapped the tonic, concentrated digitalis, left via terrace, backwards prints. Clever. Favre nodded dully. He blackmailed me. The child, ours. Poirot moved to Girard. You discovered the swap, wiped the glass rim, aconite, to protect Sabine, your niece. Girard whispered, "She's blood." I thought, "Non." Poirot whirled to Sabine. You harvested the monk's hood at 3 p.m., injected the rim at 11:50. The maid, drugged. The ghost in the mirror, your painted panel. Sabine spat. I wanted him dead, for my son. Poirot produced the coroner's final report. 2 poisons. Digitalis, slow, from the tonic. Aconite, instant from the rim. Heart stopped at 11:52, before digitalis peaked. He held up the snifter jar. Rim residue, aconite crystals, dissolved in cognac, 1 sip, paralysis. He turned to Valois. You wrote the suicide note under duress. Girard poisoned your tea to silence you. Valois wept. He said I'd ruin the child. Poirot's voice softened. The child was never yours to ruin, madame. He is the Comtesse, by Sabine, hidden to control the estate. Poirot laid the intact will on the desk. Heir, Lucien Jr. Guardian, Girard. The Canadian cousin, disinherited. The monastery donation, void. He opened the hidden ledger from the pantry. The Comte knew everything. Favre's forgeries, Sabine's affair, Valois' salon debts, Girard's birthright. He produced the torn photograph, reassembled. The Comte, embracing Clotilde, not Valois. The ruby, Sabine's, superimposed. Doctored by Raoul, paid by you, mademoiselle, to frame Girard. Sabine lunged. Chappé restrained her. Poirot lifted the christening gown. GM, Girard's, proof of birthright, not guilt. The footprints, Favre's galoshes, backwards to confuse. The love letter, forged by Raoul, S for Sabine. The monk's hood, harvested by Sabine, distilled by Girard, unused. The sealing iron, used by Favre, hidden by Sabine. He turned to the child. Lucien Jr. held the silver rattle GM, the Comte's last gift, to his heir. Poirot's voice was thunder. The killer used both poisons, digitalis to confuse, aconite to kill. He pointed to Dr. Favre. You entered at 11:30, swapped the tonic, added aconite to the glass, not rim, inside. He drank at 11:50, dead by 11:52. Favre shook his head. I left at 11:47. Poirot produced a pocket watch. Stopped at 11:50. Found in the passage. Yours. Dropped in haste. The Comte rang early. You returned. Injected the cognac after the tonic. The rim was clean. Sabine's syringe. Planted. He held up the snifter. Residue inside the bowl. Aconite crystals. Dissolved. Your fingerprints. Favre sagged. He knew about Sabine. The child. Threatened exposure. I panicked. Poirot moved to the library door. The bolt, drawn from inside. You did it, via the passage, locked it to trap suspicion. He opened the secret panel. Inside, Favre's scalpel, wax residue. You resealed the bottle. Hid the iron. Planted the syringe in Sabine's compact. Sabine screamed. You used me. Favre's voice was ash. You were disinherited. I thought, if you took the blame, the clock struck 1. Poirot raised his cane. Assez, Dr. Lucien Favre, you poisoned the Comte. For love, for silence, for a fortune lost. Favre bolted, cuffs snapping, chair crashing. He lunged for the terrace doors. Poirot's cane hooked his ankle. Favre fell, skull striking the hearth. Blood pooled, red as the wax. The child screamed, lightning flashed in the mirror. The real ghost, the Comte's reflection, raising a glass in silent toast. Chapter 10. The Little Grey Cells. The library was a battlefield after armistice. Candles guttered in pools of wax. The Persian rug drank blood like vintage wine. Dr. Lucien Favre lay sprawled where Poirot's cane had felled him, pulse fluttering, skull cracked, confession still warm on his lips. Inspector Chateau knelt, revolver lowered, cuffs ready. Hercule Poirot stood over the body, cane planted like a victory standard. His moustaches, those magnificent sculptures, were immaculate despite the chaos. Ainsi, he murmured, the little grey cells, they have triumphed. Favre's eyes fluttered open. Blood trickled from his temple. Yappé hauled him to the bergère, the death chair. Poirot's voice was silk over steel. Speak, docteur. The truth, now. Favre's laugh was wet. You want the full confession? Bien. He leaned forward, chains rattling. 11:30. I entered via the mirror passage, Sabine's idea, the little vipère. She'd harvested the monk's hood, distilled aconite. I swapped the tonic, digitalis concentrate, enough to kill in an hour. He coughed blood. 11:47. He rang early. I returned openly, gave real tonic, 10 drops. He was alive, suspicious, but alive. Poirot nodded. Continue. 11:49. I hid in the passage. He poured cognac, my glass, prepared earlier. I'd dissolved aconite crystals inside the bowl, 1 sip. He mimed drinking. Paralysis. Heart stopped at 11:52, before digitalis acted. The child, yours and Sabine's. The Comte discovered the birth papers. Planned to expose you, ruin your practice, disinherit Sabine, name the boy heir under Girard's guardianship. Favre's eyes filled. He showed me the will, said, your bastard gets nothing. I begged. He laughed. He looked at Sabine, bound and weeping. You wanted him dead for the money. I wanted him dead for us. Sabine screamed. You used me, the syringe in my compact. Planted, Favre admitted, after I wiped the rim clean. The aconite was inside the glass. Your fingerprints, none. Poirot laid the pieces on the desk like a hand of cards. The snifter, residue inside the bowl, aconite, Favre's fingerprints, the pocket watch, stopped at 11:50, dropped in the passage, the scalpel, wax residue, used to reapply the seal, the galoshes, mud from the terrace. Size 10, the journal, Comte's final entry. Favre returns at 11:49, smells of fear. He opened the secret panel. Inside, Favre's medical bag, empty digitalis vial, aconite syringe. The sealing iron, Poirot continued, hidden in the conservatory crate. You moved it after Sabine found it. He turned to Girard. You wiped the rim, thinking to protect Sabine, but the poison was inside. Girard bowed his head. I failed him. Poirot addressed each suspect. Madame Valois. Framed by the forged letter. Your tea, Girard's panic, not murder. Sabine. Framed Girard with the ruby, drugged the maid, but the killing dose, Favre's. Girard. The monk's hood was yours, but unused. The gown, your birthright, not guilt. Favre. You orchestrated all. The backwards prints, the ghost mirror, the planted syringe. He lifted the torn photograph, reassembled. Doctored by Raoul, paid by Sabine, but the real photo. He produced a second, hidden in the Comte's Bible. The Comte holding baby Lucien, Favre's eyes. The child was never yours to hide, Docteur. Poirot opened the true will, sealed, witnessed by the village priest. Heir, Lucien Jr. Guardian, Girard. Bequest to Valois, the Paris apartment. To Sabine, nothing. He turned to the child, now asleep in the priest's arms. The Comte's final act, justice. Valois wept. He forgave me. Sabine lunged again. Japet pinned her. My son! Poirot's voice was gentle. He's safe. From you. Dawn crept through the windows. Rose, gold, forgiving. The storm had passed. Only the drip of melting frost remained. Poirot stood at the terrace doors, watching the Loire slide silver below. Japet approached. The doctor. Will live, to stand trial. The little grey cells, they do not kill, they reveal. Girard entered, tailcoat restored, carrying a tray, café au lait, croissant. For the household, monsieur, one last service. Poirot accepted a cup. You will guard the heir. Girard nodded. With my life. The child stirred, reaching for the rattle. Tinkle. Poirot donned his Homburg, valise in hand. The Daimler waited, engine purring. He paused at the threshold. Mes amis, order and method, always. The dead rest, the living learn. He stepped into the morning. The gargoyles wept rain, tears of stone. Behind him, the ormolu clock chimed 6.